you for coming to our panel. So I am Hannah Monds, co-head of Influential for EMEA. My other co-head is over there, that really good-looking tall man. I'm allowed to say that. Devin, I mean, every time you're talking to someone when I introduce you. This is my co-head, also my husband, so I'm allowed to say how beautiful he is. And then on the panel joining me today is Liv Bentley, TV personality, businesswoman, influencer extraordinaire. And we have Laura Donadio, Head of Influence Marketing at Wild, and of course Katie Nelson, Head of Influence Marketing at Sky as well. So we're going to kick off with a bit of a discussion about the good, the bad, and the ugly of influence marketing. Now, I'm not texting somebody, I promise, I'm actually just getting the questions. So let's start off, success stories. So can you all share some examples of successful influencer marketing campaigns that you've been involved in or admired? So Katie, starting with you.
I think the most successful campaign that we have done at Sky is literally just the way that we do influencer marketing. So obviously Sky is a service, it's broadband, mobile, TV product, streaming service. And in order for us to kind of authentically get influencers to talk about our product, we gift them Sky. So we have about 200-300 influencers and content creators who kind of what we call Sky ambassadors. And they advocate for us via the content that they're paid to do, but then also they are just like customers as well. So we love it's authentic word of mouth that they can talk to their friends, their followers about the service, what they get, the content that the TV shows they're watching, and I think that for us it's been really, really successful, and I think that's really what the core of influencer marketing should be about, is authenticity and turning your customers into advocates. It just helps if they have a couple of million followers.
Yeah, 100%. Laura, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm joining Wild very soon, but at the minute I'm still at the Heart Group, and I think the way that we do things is maybe slightly onto the other scope of it from a performance perspective. So looking at how we can actually monetize the audience of the influencers and really work into that conversion angle. And I think something that we've learned to do is just building those communities and then turning them into consumers, and so really working on that full consumer journey with the influencers, just really driving the consumer to site and finding kind of like where that sweet spot is to drive that performance through the channel.
Yeah. And Liv, can you share an example of an influence marketing campaign that you've been involved in that you've really loved, or just one that you haven't been involved in but have really admired?
A brand I love, Revitalash, and I've never actually even been paid to use their stuff, but I use it every day and I really rate. They have like an amazing background story to their brand, and like they take us to and lunches and that kind of thing, and it's like a brand I really respect, but it's not actually about the money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And they like look after you, and
so it has that authenticity piece running to its core.
And I'm one of those people, I just won't like sell something I don't believe in.
Yeah, okay. And we're going to come on to that in a minute, so well done for preempting my questions there. So let's look at strategy and planning of an influence marketing campaign though. How do you select the right influencers for the campaigns that you're running? And what role does authenticity play? I mean, I know that we've touched upon it already, that it's a super important. Liv, you agree with that as an influencer from your point of view, but how important is it to you guys? Because I imagine it must be quite tempting to work with people that have big engagement rates and high follower rates and all that kind of stuff, but the authenticity piece, how do you really measure that and make sure that they're the right for your brands?
I mean, we have a very distinct customer segments for Sky that is kind of laid out kind of well ahead of time to say this is who our prospect customers are, and we try to model that in the influencers that we work with so that we are reaching the right people. But essentially we have so many products within Sky and so many price points that it could be anyone. So really we look for high engagement, because quite often you're paying for follow accounts where you're not getting the engagement, and engagement is key. There's no point in getting impressions if people aren't engaging with content. And so it's usually high engagement rate, that they create authentic content that feels right for their audience, and that they genuinely use the product. I think definitely in your case as well, like you don't want anyone talking about a brand if they quite obviously don't use the product.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
Do you look at other brands that they promote, and does that then come into factor?
Absolutely. I think like Sky have a quite evolved environmental program called Sky Zero, and so we do consider that like if a influencer is promoting like a lot of fast fashion brands or brands that we don't align with, we wouldn't kind of go down that angle. So absolutely other brands they promote. We have an agency we work with called Hawk that do a lot of deep dives into like social posts in the past that may come up, because obviously if you align yourself with a brand or an influencer and something comes out, a lot of the time when the media pick that up, they then write about the brands that the influencer works with, so you've got to be careful with that. But yeah, kind of we do a full picture. And one really random fact, kind of stat, is about how much of their audience is in the UK. I think for global brands that doesn't matter so much, but we are very much trying to reach a British population. And for a lot of influencers, a lot of their audience is based in the US, and so again, you're kind of getting a lot of wastage there. So we don't expect 100%, that's impossible, but usually around 60% of the following to be based in the UK.
And is that so interesting seeing the other side of it?
Yeah.
It is interesting.
It is, because you probably never speak to brands this way.
Because I don't, because it's always through my agent, so I never understand it.
Which is again another thing that we have as part of our ambassador program, is we like to do regular check-ins with influencers
Can I just say, I think the ambassador program with brands is a massive thing. Like for me, I love working with brands that are ongoing, like not just one-off jobs, because then you build a relationship, and then the brand understands you as an influencer, and you understand them and what they want and what you want. Like it's a much better.
A huge chunk of my team's job is to regularly communicate with influencers themselves. Agents fine, but the influencers are the ones that are going to be like using the brand. So we'll be like sending them updates on new TV shows coming out, or kind of new products that we're going to work on, or new campaigns, just to kind of get that connection.
Laura?
I was going to build on a couple of things, and now I don't know where to start because it was so much that was mentioned. I think the consumer segmentation is definitely a key one. I think, for example, we own Look Fantastic and Cold Beauty, and we want to make sure we're not cannibalizing on everyone's audience. So what we want to do is make sure that each brand has a specific positioning, and that positioning is reflected through the influencers. So really finding someone that is the right brand fit for it, from the way that they speak and communicate with their communities, the way that they promote brands in general, but also the type of product and the type of brands that they associate with each other with. So this is one that you really want to make sure that you check everything when you work with them. And I think back to what you said, you want to look at historical partnerships as well, so making sure they've not associated themselves with brands that don't align with your brand ethos, or whatever you're positioning your brands with. And then another thing was around the metrics. So it's quite interesting on the audience location, for example. We've worked with influencers that maybe had 10% of their audience in the UK, but somehow converted so well in the UK specifically. So I think sometimes it is quite misleading, because you're right, so many of their audiences are split literally across the whole world. But it might actually be that they still have a super engaged audience within that 10%. And sometimes it is worth continuing to work with those people. So what we do is we tend to not do any one-off partnerships just because we agree it just doesn't work. So we tend to do a minimum of 3 months, and after 3 months we review how that performance has gone, and then we kind of like continue building onto it. Just because it's better to build that relationship with the people and just feel like it's not just like, throwing cash at.
Because I actually then think the influencer puts more time and effort into it, especially as you guys grow, like they grow with you.
Absolutely. And then you build that relationship as well with the audience, where you start exposing the brand and the product, and it feels just a bit more organic to go through it, rather than just a one-off super promotional ad that doesn't look very authentic. And
and how important is it to live to work with brands that you believe in, that fit with your image, as opposed to just kind of taking the money and running?
I think now, before when I started influencing, it was all about the cash. Send through the brief straight down to that money side. Now I'm because I think I'm getting older, and my audience is potentially not getting younger, but because I'm selling to younger people, I care a lot about that, and I don't want to sell anything that I don't believe in.
It's a responsibility.
It's huge, and especially like my big thing is hair loss. So I can't sell something that doesn't actually work. And like I will now only actually promote anything that I've genuinely tried and used. Because there are certain brands, like I've had hair, like shampoo companies come to me saying, "Oh, can you also say it's helped with your alopecia?" And I'm like, no, I can't just say that, because I haven't used it and it might not happen. And so,
but that's admirable though, because there will be people that say,
they say yes to money. I got influenced. Are you joking?
Exactly.
When I first started doing influencing, I saw loads of influencers having like amazing thick hair from eating these gummies. I was like, I'm buying them. And then discovered they all had hair extensions. So it's like, that's where you've got to be really careful. But I think it's really important to you've got to.
Everyone sees through it as well.
But now I think they do, 100%.
If you're advertising hair loss one week and a garden hose the next week, there's something seriously wrong.
Unless she's always in her garden, in her content outside of the garden hose content.
I was referring to myself. I have done that before. Right, perfect. Right, challenges and pitfalls. What are some common challenges that brands face when working with influencers?
This is more interesting for me.
Exactly. And how do you handle an influencer that doesn't meet your expectations?
So this is probably twofold. The biggest challenge we have is selling internally to key stakeholders that influencer marketing is a valuable marketing channel.
Yeah.
It is, the results are there, so we have a lot of data to back that up, but it's still, you're often dealing with people who aren't social natives, aren't on social at all very often, and definitely do not follow people outside of some news channels and sports channels, to try and convince them that yes, this content is actually going to work to help change brand perceptions or to shift product. And often the content might not appeal to them, and they are used to kind of reviewing a TV ad or reviewing a piece of outdoor advertising that has broad appeal and mass appeal, and because influencer content is so specific to that influencer's audience, it's not going to appeal to a 65-year-old marketing director. So trying to convince them that yes, this, whatever you might think it's frivolous and silly, but it's actually going to work, is probably the hardest point. And then if something happens where it doesn't perform to how we thought it was going to perform, or the clicks weren't there, or whatever it is, instantly they're like, well, then it doesn't work at all. We'll just cut the whole thing off the plan.
Write it off completely.
And trying to work to, because often it's not the influencer's fault. The algorithm is impossible to measure
You're
now.
telling me Saturday night, don't post. You're right now, especially now when the sun's out, everyone's at the pub.
In a week, it might be that Saturday night's the best time to post, and having to work hand in hand with influencers to kind of will put some money behind a post sometimes if it's not performing very well.
Do you do specific briefs for specific influencers, or is it like a similarly same brief for everyone?
So we try and keep the brief really broad. So it's like, this is the new show, this is the sports moment, this is the product. How would you interpret that for your audience?
That's good, by the way. That's way better.
And that has helped performance.
Oh, yeah, because I've worked with brands and it's so specific, and I get sent these essays, and I'm like, I didn't go to acting school, I don't know how to read all this. Like,
literally a script.
Every ingredient, I'm like, people are going to know it's an ad. Like, does it feel natural?
The best influencer marketing is when you send a product and say, use it, and then tell us how you feel about it. But if you don't like it, then don't post about it.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think it's the best way.
It's just a simple
100%.
recipe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask, have you ever been on the receiving end of any really mismanaged campaigns?
Yes.
You don't have to say the brand.
Nearly got lawyers involved. Yeah, I did. I think they conned me. I did one with a brand, and I was filming in Australia at the time. So when the time they asked me to post, I was asleep. So anyway, I posted it a bit later. At the time, they didn't say anything. And I said to my agent, I was like, do they want me to repost? I'm more than happy to do another post for free. Anyway, when the invoice my agent then invoiced the brand, and they then turned around and said all the complaints. And I was like, well, hang on, at the time they never said anything. So they knocked thousands of pounds off this deal that I had gone around London shooting hundreds of times, trying to do. And I would never normally post on my Instagram about brands in a negative way ever. This one brand, I was borderline going to warn other influencers that they were trying to. It was almost like a con. It was, and it was really it was a lot. Because I feel like I held up my end of the bargain and they didn't, and it was just a bit I understand, not everyone has massive budgets, and so where you put your money, you expect delivery on certain things. So if you get the timing off, I understand doing that, but then knocking off thousands of pounds from a deal. Yeah, it's just crazy.
It's not fair. That only happens in influence marketing. Those kind of mistakes are made all the time across the board. I've worked in out-of-home, print, digital, etc. You don't get written off immediately after one mistake. I didn't, but the company I worked for once ran a high-profile banking ad on Pornhub. And it was a disaster, but equally they just spent the money against we gave them added value. But there wasn't loads of we're pulling all the money.
Oh no, this company came back to me and they were like, you've damaged the goods. I was like, you don't even know what the goods look like. I was like, it's in my house, it's still in its box basically. It was,
And Laura, have you ever run any campaigns where you've had bad experiences with the influencers?
Well, I think back to what you were saying, influencer marketing is the first budget to get cut. So I think, as you said, if it's not performing straight away, especially from an agency perspective, if you have different campaigns running, the clients, if they're not used to influencer marketing, they're just very easy to go all right, 2 weeks of performance is not there, we're just going to cut it. So I think convincing stakeholders is a big one. But I think it's also staying on top of the campaign concepts, so making sure that it's not just a promo ad and it's something that has a bit more meaning to it. I think nowadays we see that generations just really want to hear about why that brand, why that product, why should they purchase that specific one. And I think it's making sure that your product is actually cutting through the noise and has a specific angle to it. And I think it's hard sometimes to always find the right angle and the right hook for a campaign. But then, as you said, to then not send a brief that is super scripted, that feels like literally you're reading off,
honestly, I've got my laptop up sometimes and I might be reading from the side
exactly that. So I think we do the same as you, but I think sometimes you also have to consider that some product might have some medical components and some things that the people really can't say. So it's always making sure that the brief is kind of informative, but at the same time not too conservative and not too constrictive when it comes to the way that you're promoting it. So finding a nice original hook to it, finding that personality shining through the content, but also making sure you hit all of your CTAs and kind of all the things that really need to be discussed through the content.
But it's
a
hard
balance.
I work with brands, and I at the time didn't think about things like testing on animals.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that, and I mean it was probably me being thick, and I should have really googled it.
No,
but then afterwards, I've done the post, and then I get so many people trolling me, being like, "They test on animals. You shouldn't use this. You shouldn't use that." Obviously,
Massive
there's no,
backlash,
like,
absolutely,
and it's hard because then I don't want to be seen as being like an advocate for that.
So that's it. So sometimes with like makeup composition, skincare, anything, like supplements, you want to make sure that you know exactly what the side effects, even whatever, and make sure that you're right in what you're saying, so you don't get that big backlash on social.
But that's also terrible for the brand to be paying for content through you, and then it's like they're being exposed. So you'd think that they would be educating you before they.
And I think we have a kind of control. So before you would go live with the content, we would check, especially if there's any sort of medical claims. We'll make sure that you hit all the points and that you're not going with any wild statements.
Because brands don't disclose a lot of things. Like, I've only realised, and then I get the aftermath, and then I'm like, hang on.
It's also really different for you because, like, I was saying this to you before, we categorize influencers as creators who are very TikTok first, create content, you don't know really anything about their personal lives. Influencers, like, they're the originals who started posting blogs, then went to Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and like they've been doing this for 20 years. They know how to work with brands. You are in this third bucket of like TV personalities, podcasters who have a social following because of your profile, and you're almost coming into this as a newbie kind of, and so it's very different.
Really.
That's where agents come in.
This isn't on the question list, so I'm gonna. But how do you manage it? Because you mentioned you've obviously been a Made in Chelsea since you were little, really, and you've grown a lot and you've grown up within that time. How do you manage your profiles now, given that there would have been a lot of stuff about you in your younger years, and now you've obviously changed? So how do you maintain a following, make sure it's authentic, but when you've had maybe one type of following and now it's evolved, like how do you make sure you're still...
Well, it's hard because I did a show called Sidemen, so my followers are all 19-year-old blokes, so it's slightly different to what it used to be. But I think the two things that I've always been a massive advocate for are sexual health and wellness and hair loss, and they're always going to be the big things that I want to like promote and encourage, and if I can help someone who's got hair loss, then 100% I'll do that. But it's weird. I mean, I feel old. I don't have TikTok. I've only just managed to line up my music with my reels. Like, it's really not easy. But yeah, I don't really.
Because how do you navigate that if you've got an influencer that maybe you've written off in the past because they've attracted one kind of audience, but now they've kind of...
So like before, I used to, on the show, was probably known as like a party girl. So I promote booze things. I couldn't be promoting protein shakes. People were like, well, that's not right. Whereas now I'm like more into the health and wellness side of things. So I would work with that. So it seems like it changed. But I don't know with the actual influencers if they always have the same sort of, not aesthetic, but like their goal with influencers. I suppose with age it does change anyway. What you want to promote and work with.
Through the years, the same way that you would as an individual, like ultimately that's that your life will kind of like grow, and some people would then get pregnant and then all of their content will suddenly shift and go into like baby stuff, but then it's good because brand can kind of just jump on a trend and then start working with them on that respect.
But I think it comes back to engagement, because if they change their life from a party girl to a health girl, as long as they're still getting engagement, that means that their audience will either change with them or they've attracted a new audience. I think the difference is if they change their lifestyle or they change their content and the engagement drops off, your audience haven't travelled with you, so it's easy to see that.
I know if I post a bikini video when I'm away, my engagement's to the roof. And I'm not like selling that, but then I know it will boost my... You know what I mean? When you're away, everything's just through the roof. Sitting at home in your London flat selling something dodgy, people aren't interested.
No engagement.
I'll tell Devin stop liking your posts late on a Saturday night. Last question. What do you enjoy most about your job? And I'll start with you, Liv.
Meeting brands. I love hearing... My favourite thing with brands, and I love hearing the backstory about how brands were created. I love, like, female founded. I love... like the ethics or the ethos behind it, like that for me is amazing. I think
100%.
And working with brands that genuinely work. Like I think there is a lot of crap out there, and there is. And I shouldn't say that, but there's some brands that really are amazing. Like I've had some amazing hair treatments. I've like discovered loads of new things. So that's for me. That's
so it's really genuinely helping people. Laura?
Variety of it. I've been in it for about 10, 11 years now, and no 2 days are the same.
Yeah.
And every year has been completely different. And I think because everything is changing all the time on social, new social, even just the algorithm, just adapting to that, it's just wild. And I think it's just kept me going. Like,
with this, the algorithm thing is actually so messed up. So
It
what,
really
what
is
like,
difficult.
do you feel like it's a waste of money when you pay an
No.
influencer to do a certain thing and then they
oh my
don't
god, no,
deliver?
please don't. That would be so sad. We spent absolute millions on this. I agree
I'll
with
be
putting
next.
spend behind it. So I think, but even if the algorithm is changing, if you've got enough creators and enough influencers that you don't put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
So if one content is tanking, it might be that specific piece of content is tanking. But if you've got a long-term relationship and they've got different points of exposure throughout the campaigns, it doesn't matter if that one piece is performing a little bit less than the rest.
Okay. Yeah.
So as long as it's within a sea of content, you're still getting that exposure, you're still getting the engagements, you're still getting that campaign's visibility.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously if, some brands are like, oh no, I want to work with one influencer this month, like, bit risky, but okay, if that's what you want to do, fine. Spend all of your budget on one person, and then if that piece of content tanks, then yeah, you're screwed. So I think this is where you want to de-risk it. You want to build that well-rounded campaign where you have different communities, different size of influencers as well. So you're not just paying for the big ones, because sometimes the
The
small
micro
ones
ones are better almost, aren't
exactly.
they?
They might perform better, but again, it depends on the engagement and depends on the kind of content they churn, and it really very much depends on what you're trying to do with it. But I would say the more creators you can engage, the better, as long as you're strategic with it and it's not just throwing money at a lot of people. But
It's also, every platform is different. YouTube is there for reach, not engagement. Instagram is there for longer storytelling. And we've just taken a new approach on TikTok because we're now starting to what we call commission content rather than brief. Because in TikTok you can have 3 followers, but you can get millions of views on your piece of content. So following doesn't matter. We can't just send them a brief. We have to commission content with them because it's not an influencer marketing platform.
I'm
It's
so
a
glad you said the following
content
doesn't matter.
platform. Yeah.
Because I think
No, followers do not. So don't worry. If
Good.
you just
I haven't
started,
hit a
you'll be
million
fine.
yet.
Just create really, really shit hot content. Yeah.
On that note, that's it from us. So I could talk for hours and hours with you lot, especially over a few drinks, which I think we should go and have right now. But thank you very much for watching. You've been a fantastic audience. I sound like a game show host at this point. But really lovely to see you all. Thank you all for listening. And thank you very much to Katie, Laura and Liv.